So installing Windows Server is kind of easy. I mean, you can do it in many ways. We often happen to be in situations where we either are building something from greenfield, means nothing exists, or we are reconstructing a company that was hit by ransomware. So in both cases where we build new fabrics and when we build new data centers, as well as when we recover customers, we need to have a deployment solution that is already up and running. We can't wait to build the infrastructure to be able to deploy the infrastructure. We need to start from somewhere. So we have created the deployment solution in the cloud. We are using just boot on media and across the internet down to the little device. So before we go into how to install and how to configure, let's see how it looks like. So this is a virtual machine. It could be a physical machine, but it's easier to do a demo on a virtual machine. It's booting on media. It could boot on Pixie or it could boot on iPixie. It really doesn't matter. As long as it's booting on Windows PE Media, it will connect directly to Azure. So we're not going to start over Pixie, but we are going to start on media, booting on media. And we're not going to watch the entire deployment process either, because it takes a while. It doesn't take too much time, but it still takes time. So here it is. It's called PowerShell deployment. It's based on Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, but instead of running VB script, it's running PowerShell. When we're running PowerShell, we can do funky things like mount the entire deployment share. We also created a little nifty start menu, but I'm not going to use that, so let's continue. So it's basically MDT, but everything VB was replaced with PowerShell, and that means we can use other transportation protocols like HTTP, HTTPS, and we can authenticate differently as well. That means we can make it more secure and more reliable. So first of all, I'm going to do this by copying the username and type in the absolute fabulous username. And then I'm going to type in the password like that. And hopefully it's going to give us a good to go. And presenting a wizard. Since we're using HTTP and HTTPS as transport, we can also leverage branch cache, which we do. And enabling branch cache means that if you deploy one machine, all the other ones will be really, really fast. So I'm going to pick a Windows Server 2019 standard, give it the name MVPD 002 with a super secret local password. I could join it to the domain if I want to, but I'm not going to do that. So let's do start. And it's going to partition and format. And you can see it kind of looks like MDT because we're using the task sequence engine. But anything below this is nothing MDT at all. It looks like MDT on the server side, but not when we are installing. And I want you to see what kind of speed you get when we're using the branch cache. And branch cache is a tool from 2Pint Software, which you can download from their site and inject that into the task sequence. And when you do, it will be considerably faster to download. So last week we deployed approximately 100 servers and about 1,300 clients across the internet. And we only have one VM in Azure, and it wasn't really working much. But as you can see, it's pretty fast. And the reason is, of course, it's downloading from peers. So the entire time it takes to deploy an operating system, it's around 20 minutes or so. if you want to do patching and installing applications, which we do, then the entire install time usually ends up around 30-35 minutes. I think that's maybe 40. I think that's pretty okay for having no infrastructure and the only thing you have is an internet connection and it points to Azure. And since we're also using branch cache, it means we don't really pay for networking traffic. We only do that for the first machine, but once that machine has been downloaded and installed, it's going to grab all the other bits from peers as long as they're on the same subnet. So I think this is pretty good, right? So let's see how you install this. So I'm going to pause this and I'm going to come back so we can check how to install this. Okay, so here we are. This is a Windows Server 2019. It's a workgroup machine, could be domain joined, doesn't really matter. We installed ADK, we installed WinPE, and we installed Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. That's the only thing we installed. We haven't created anything. So the first thing would be to download PowerShell Deployment Toolkit extension. And I've done so. And if I go to this directory, you can see it's here. And we need to run install psd dash and now psd. And I want to have a deployment share. It's going to be named PSD. And verbose just for the fun of it. So this is going to take, I don't know, a minute, 1.5, and then you have something that looks like a regular MDT deployment share. However, it just looks like one. So let's open it up and see what's inside. So if I open this one and go here, you can see it looks perfectly fine. I can go to my task sequences. I can create a new task sequence. I can give it a name, but we now have what's called PSD standard client task sequence and PSD standard server task sequences. And sure, can you use the other ones? No, you can't, because everything that you have in MBT has now been replaced with PowerShell. The one part that makes it possible to install over the internet, besides doing basic stuff like importing operating system that you need to have even if you deploy locally, well, we can start with that. Let's do that first. So let's go to my Azure C drive and ISO, mount the ISO. ISO is mounted. I need to import the operating system, full set of source files, and that's going to be on that drive. Windows Server 2019 x64. Importing. Yes, this takes time. Yes, this is boring. Almost done. Why does it always take so much more time in the end? 99%. There you go. So we have that. I can easily create a task sequence. VS 2019, I don't know, -1. Windows Server 2019 Standard Edition. Something like that. Next. And then I'm going to pick the standard server task sequence. Pick the standard version of Windows Server 2019. Don't want to have a product key. That's fine. Don't have a password. And when you open this up, it's going to not look like any normal task sequence of sort. It's shorter. It's have fewer steps. But this is basically it. So the part that is missing right now is what? Well, you need to have that internet thing. So we need to make that happen, and we're going to do that by running a script. So again, checking the folder structure, We have tools. So let's go to tools. That wasn't tools. This is tools. That's tools. So then we have a new PS web instance. So let's do that. PSD web instance. We need to do that first. Let's do verbose just for the fun of it. And that is going to install all the components we need to have for IIS, because it's using IIS and WebDAV to provide the functionality over the network. It's going to need a restart after this, so I'm going to pause this so we don't waste your time. Okay, so here we are, we rebooted, and now we're running set PSD web instance, PS deployment folder, e:/PSD, and virtual directory. This is going to configure IIS to accept WebDAV for that folder, and also configure that specific instance. And let's run that. Seems to be working. So once this is done, we can now change the path for the deployment share to be network-based instead, being HTTP-based. So we have IIS installed, and if we go here, you can now see that we have a deployment site called PSD, and if we open the content, we can see the entire deployment share. Should we use things like anonymous access to this? No, we should absolutely not do that. So we do need to change this and make sure. Well, the script actually does that. It didn't do that in the beginning. We just don't want to have anonymous access to this, so everybody needs to authenticate, of course. And that's going to be pretty much the only thing you need to do. You need to create a boot image, like you do with MDT. But as you can see, a solution like this, and having this as either permanent solution, or like we have, or a backup solution to be able to spin it up when needed. Maybe you don't need to maintain it that much, but having this as an ace when it comes to we need to deploy, we need to recover, we need to whatever we need to do. We have more and more customers running this as a permanent solution instead of having it locally, because it works across the cloud, and then nobody really cares. So the only thing we need to do here is change this to make sure that is going to be wrong. This needs to be HTTP, and in this case, let's assume this is MVPDays 002 PSD. That's it. Now you generate the boot image, which takes a while, like 5 minutes, by updating the boot image, and then you boot on a physical machine or a VM, and it works. So what's the difference if it's a virtual machine or a physical machine? Well, if it's a physical machine, you do need to have drivers. And you can create drivers by creating folders. So here's a new folder, and Windows Server 2019 is going to be the folder. And then maybe it's an HP driver, or it's an, I don't know, let's call it an HP ProLiant Micro, I don't know, server. And it needs to have the correct name. According to WMI, I think that's correct, Gen 8. Is that correct? Let's assume that's the name. the only thing you really need to do is generate imported drivers here. Once they are imported here, you need to modify the task sequence, and you go to the task sequence, which we have here, and you're going to have a step called set driver group 001. And the only thing you need to do is make sure that the first folder, Windows Server 2019, that's correct, and then you have the model. Now, if this was a virtual machine, and yeah, well, let's assume it's a physical machine and you want to find out what the model name of the machine is. And then it's going to be get WMI object Win32 computer system. And here you can see the model name. That's going to be the one that gets imported. So if I take a copy of that and I want to have drivers for a virtual machine, I have no idea why I would ever do that. I'm going to put them in here. Import the drivers to that folder. Now, just because you import the drivers doesn't mean they automatically get generated. That needs to be packaged pre-staged. So let's go here to Tools, and to down the directory again, you see there's something called New PS Driver Package. New PS Driver Package. And you must specify a folder. Yeah, I need to do that. E:PSD, that's the folder. I don't need to debug, it seems too much. And in this case, it's going to run through and look for all the different drivers in all the different folders. I didn't have any. And then it also creates these files. Once this is done, you're actually ready to go. That's pretty much it. If we take a step into an existing solution, and this is our cloud-based solution. If I go in here, you can see that we have a bunch of different applications. These are mainly client applications because on servers we install roles. But in the case of server, you see we can actually install Azure Stack HCI across the network. Here we have, for instance, the standard or data center. If I go to data center, we can have different roles like, well, this is a Hyper-V, and in that case, you should do the following things. We always install labs. So we really have one location to store all the deployment of all servers and clients if needed. When it comes to building fabrics or recovering environments. So this is about server deployment across the internet without actually having any local infrastructure. And I didn't tell you my name, but my name is Mikael Nystrom. I work for TrueSec, and I'm also known as the Deployment Bunny. Have a nice day. By the way, I didn't tell you where to download it, but here it is on GitHub, Friends of MDT PSD. Here it is. It is being updated quite often by strange people. You can download it here, and then you can run it. You see, last time was 2 months ago. We have a few updates in the pipe, and we assume we will continue working on this for a few more years because it's needed. We do need to deploy machines across the internet, that's for sure. Now I'm done.